Hi, I'm Tatum, and if, like Dochi, anxiety has always been trying you and watching like an inevitable stalker, what happens when you actually get cancer? And that anxiety is now mixing with scanxiety, is now mixing with hormones and treatment and uncertainty about the future. So that's what we're diving into today. And I'm not doing it on my own. I've got three amazing guests with me that are going to share their experiences of how anxiety has mixed with their diagnosis and things that they've tried to help and what's worked and perhaps what's not. Welcome to the show, Sanna. Can you tell me, what does anxiety mean to you?
I think for me, anxiety is like a response to uncertainty. I mean, it can range in how my body reacts to it as well. Like sometimes it's really loud. I feel like, sudden panic, fear, pit of the stomach stuff. And other times I go all quiet and avoidant. So I think, it shows up differently.
Fatima, how does that description sit with you?
I completely agree with Sanna. Definitely, I get it. The fear, the stress, uncertainty, that I think that's what anxiety means to me, is not having control and just that uncertainty. It just feels very, very real. And when you're in that moment, it's just hard to escape.
Yeah. That feeling of it being real. I'd love to come back to that a bit later. Yeah. Alison.
Yeah, similar. I think that feeling of like the bottom of your stomach just dropping out or the heart racing and just I feel quite shaky. And sometimes I'm anxious about a specific thing that's going wrong. And sometimes I'm just anxious and I don't even know what is the thing that could go wrong. But is that fear of the worst thing happening, whether I know what that is or not?
Yeah. And Alison, can you tell me a little bit about what was happening in your life when you were diagnosed?
Yeah, so I was diagnosed with originally was diagnosed as stage 3 bowel cancer, but it was downstaged after surgery to stage 2. But at the age of 39, I was married with 2 kids and started having symptoms. And then whilst I was dealing with the diagnosis and the treatment, I also then, I think sometimes cancer and that kind of crisis can shine a bright light on your life and maybe throw it into sharp relief. And I think it kind of forced me to examine the ways that my marriage wasn't healthy, the ways that my husband couldn't show up and support me in the ways that I needed, but also then that kind of pulled on the thread and led me to facing my own sexuality and coming out as a lesbian at the age of 39. So I was dealing with a divorce that I never thought I was going to be getting, or cancer treatment and the uncertainty of that, and then the uncertainty of entering the dating world and the queer world at the age of 39, not having ever expected that I would ever be single again. I'd been married, I'd been with my partner for 20 years and never thought that I would be in that situation. That's kind of where I was.
And that's the thing. Anxiety and cancer and all these things, they don't happen in a vacuum. And like you said, when cancer comes into your life, so many things can be in flux. They can be emotion, but also, as you were saying, like shining a bright light on actually things needing to change. That's a huge amount going on. I know I just dealt with coming out when I was not looking after anyone else and I wasn't unwell. And that was huge. That totally overwhelmed my life. So yeah, I can really imagine. So in the midst of that, what was kind of the peak anxiety? When did you ever get to that point of like, I maxed out? Like, what did that look like for you?
I think there were a few points of feeling maxed out. So, because I think, again, like anxiety being that feeling of like fearing the worst happening, like getting the cancer diagnosis. And I think at one point, the doctors are very reticent to put any numbers on it. But when I did my research or whatever, it did look like kind of a 50-50 chance of me reaching my 50th birthday. And I had, my children were 4 and 10 at the time, so quite young. And so I was facing, that was the worst thing. So I think there was that. And then when I was trying to get my treatment plan and it was being delayed and I didn't have any control and I was like stuck in the bureaucratic, like the wheels just weren't turning at the hospital and I was just stuck there and I couldn't speak to anybody and I couldn't get a treatment plan. That was a low point. But then I think there was also a point then when I was kind of going through treatment, I was having the side effects from the chemotherapy and going through divorce and not sure how I would afford to live and support my kids and how do I protect my kids from the fallout of divorce while also protecting them for fearing of my health. And that was also definitely like a low point when I didn't know how I was going to pay the mortgage and support my kids as a single mother.
And
I wouldn't recommend it.
I mean, to be juggling it, because there's financial, there's work, there's children, there's relationships, there's health. And I mean, going to Fatima's point about the realness of anxiety, I think it is because I think, sometimes people say, oh, I have anxiety, and it is absolutely a feeling, but it may or may not be about something actually going to happen. It can be, I'm feeling really anxious in a very general way. But what I'm hearing in your description is very tangible, real numbers, such as 50-50, getting to 50, right? Like that's enough, because 50% is like, that's pretty good. But then 50% of not is devastating. And numbers, playing those games with your mind. How were you able to kind of pull apart the things that you were like, okay, this is real enough that I'm giving energy to, and this is maybe parking it for another day? Or did it all just come at the same time?
Well, I think Fatima and Sanna both also spoke to that issue of control, or the lack of control as well. So I think that you also had these numbers and no control over them. And I think there was also an element of, I've had anxiety before cancer, but sometimes that anxiety would be about people not liking me, or a work email, or missing a deadline, or something like that. And I would always, some of the coping strategies I had for that was like, okay, well, look around the room. Is there a lion that could eat me? No, I'm fine. I'm safe. And to ground myself in my security and my safety, and then kind of keep perspective over the things that were causing me anxiety. But then again, when you're dealing with cancer, it's like, no, this is the thing. Like, this is actually, it's not a lion in the room that could kill me, but it is something that could kill me, that's in my body. And I have no control over getting it out of my body right now. And there's nothing I can do right now. I can't get it. I can't get my specialist nurses on the phone. I can't, so that reality, Fatima, that resonates. And so in some ways, I think some of the things that worked for my anxiety in the pre-cancer life, I just felt like, well, that doesn't work. But I think in some ways as well, there were some things that like I could pull in that did work to just ground myself in, okay, like, what can I control right now? And actually just accepting what I couldn't control. And I know that sounds kind of lame as I'm hearing it back to myself, but there's an element of just like, accept, like, okay, I can't do anything about that right now, but what I can do is prepare myself a healthy meal, show myself a little bit of self-care, show myself some love, whatever that looks like, give myself some moment of joy to just be in my body and to appreciate my body and to be present in this life that I have this moment right now, and that kind of thing. That did help, but it was very real.
I'm really glad to hear that you had those moments of grounding, but there were particular challenges within your body and with food and processing food as part of your diagnosis, which made, because I think that's also the thing, is you can't just step out of your body for a couple of days and take a break, whereas like if work anxiety got too much, you're like, oh, well, maybe I'll take a couple of days off, or, I'm not going to work over the weekend, I'm not going to think about it. But actually, when it's to do with your body, can you tell me a little bit about the having to sustain that on a daily basis?
Yeah, so that was tricky because I was having active symptoms. So bowel cancer, I had blood in my stool, which prompted me to go to my GP, was referred for my colonoscopy. And before the colonoscopy, I had to go on a low fiber diet. At the time I was vegan, so I ate a lot of lentils and beans as sources of protein, a lot of whole foods, quite a healthy diet, like a diet that they actually would advise you to have to prevent bowel cancer. I was living that diet. And then suddenly I had to go on a low fiber diet, white bread, processed foods, a lot of heavily processed foods. My nurses at the first hospital actually recommended like pot noodle. So I was eating a lot of like instant pot noodle, which was actually the sodium was getting to me. I just didn't feel well in my body. And also then I think even the low fiber diet, which was really necessary to avoid a blockage that actually would have required emergency surgery and would have negatively impacted my chances. So it was important to go on a low fiber diet, but I was actually finding it also exacerbated my symptoms. So I was having much more blood and much more discomfort. And so, every time I ate, like even when I tried to nourish my body, every time I ate, it was this battle. It was really uncomfortable and a constant reminder of what was happening in my body, that I had this, what was called a bulky tumor. I had this bulky tumor that was like half blocking my bowel. and that fear as well, that anxiety of like, if I do have too much fiber, if I do break down and eat some vegetables because I crave it so much, there is that risk that I could actually have a blockage.
And one of the things that I did see that distinguishes anxiety from panic is the ability for it to be long lasting. And that's really what you've described there. Like every time you eat, every time you go to the bathroom, there is that reminder, but also that, you know, it doesn't go away. And the things that you would have done, because I think that's also the thing, is the coping mechanisms from before, sometimes they don't work, but the things like, I'll make myself a nice meal, I'll eat something really lovely and healthy, and you don't get to have that. And the other thing that I hear in there, and what I'm maybe extrapolating a little bit, but sometimes eating food that is a bit processed can actually make you feel more and that can affect your mental health too.
Absolutely, especially if you're on if you're on like a high fruit and vegetable diet and everything like that, and like there are links between kind of fruit and vegetables and mental health and depression, like and to suddenly I think any sudden lifestyle change like that is going to have an impact, and my body definitely was not loving it. So I did find, and I had to track my fiber very carefully to find ways. So I got a juicer and started juicing a lot, because that was a way of getting some nutrients and having something that felt healthy for myself, but that wasn't fiber. So I was removing so much of the fiber before I could consume it. So I started to find ways, but it did feel risky because I also felt like I was going away from the playbook that my healthcare professionals had given me. I wasn't sticking to the kind of pot noodle, white bread, eggs.
I did hear that beef pot noodles are vegan.
I gave up on the vegan. I became vegetarian. So I did start eating eggs and dairy again because I needed the protein. And I wanted to also prepare my body. I knew I was going into surgery and possibly chemotherapy after. So I was trying to also give my body, I wanted to be in the best shape that I could be to kind of going into treatment as well. And I did feel quite like lethargic, and it just felt icky.
Yeah.
It was like another thing that control had been taken away from me. There were all these things, like even preparing myself with simple food, knowing when I was going to go off work, like all of the things that I could do normally. It's like, okay, well, what's in my control? What's in my sphere of influence? And let me tackle those things. And that gives me that dopamine hit or that sense of control, even if I know that in life I don't have total control. And it was like, even those basic things were taken away from me. I did find ways that I could say, like, what is in my control? And it was things like going swimming. Like I would book myself into swimming, and I would swim vigorously for about 45 minutes, just swimming laps, and then treat myself to like a sauna, because that was something that just like got me into my body. And it's like, well, I can't control anything else, but I can control how long I swim for. I can control if I pass this guy in the medium speed lane.
Thank you, Alison. And we're going to talk a bit more about those things taking over that guy in the medium lane. Fatima, I'd love to bring you in here. How was it hearing from Alison?
First of all, I have to say, Alison, you're just absolutely fantastic, and well done for going through so much. And you've got this wonderful positivity about you. And there's a lot, I take a lot from that. There's anxiety in so many different ways, not only the health conditions or the health worries, but, social concerns, and then managing your children. So like you, I'm a mother as well. So it's a lot to take on. And we just have to kind of take a minute and just remind ourselves of what we've been through, what we've come through, and just allow ourselves to be very mindful and very kind to ourselves.
So tell me a little bit about what was going on in your life when you were diagnosed.
Yes, so I mentioned I'm a mum of 3, diagnosed when I was 33, and anxiety had always played a role in my life prior to diagnosis. So a lot was going on beforehand, and it was a really difficult couple of years trying to navigate a lot of changes. And it was almost like, well, here you go, here's some cancer, just as a bit of a cherry on the top, throw that into the mix, and here, deal with this as well. So I was diagnosed with grade 3 invasive ductal carcinoma, so breast cancer. What was a very, very tiny lump, a really teeny tiny lump that I spotted in the shower, and at first glance didn't think much of it, but I have to thank my wonderful husband who was like, just go to the GP and just go get it checked out, you know. And yeah, I was told it was a cyst 3 times. Nothing to worry about. You're too young. It's a cyst. Don't worry. You'll be fine. Nothing to worry about. But I am glad that I persevered just to get it checked out. Ended up having a biopsy, and that tiny, teeny lump turned out to be 27 millimeters of grade 3 breast cancer. So, yeah, it's definitely been, and I hate to use this word, a journey.
The J word, yes. So there can be a bureaucracy of being diagnosed and where am I in the plan? What is going on? Doctors changing their minds, but what I could hear in there, 3 times you were told it was a cyst. So then when you are told something again, did you find that there was an anxiety of, are they sure this time? Or, like that doubt, that uncertainty that happens when you've had to persevere. And then wondering, as you were going through treatment, did you feel like you needed to keep persevering?
Oh, yes. Being initially told and kind of reassured by the GP that it does seem like a cyst. You're too young, You've breastfed your children. You've had your children very young. You've done all the right things. So it doesn't seem like it is breast cancer. At the back of my head, I always thought, actually, could it be cancer? At first glance, I was like, no, I'm reassured. I'm reassured. But you know what? Let's just persevere, carry on, let's get through. That type of anxiety, the reason why I said it was so real is because you are literally in fight or flight mode. Fight, flight, or freeze. So you are literally fighting for that diagnosis. You are fighting to get clarity of that diagnosis. You are fighting for the right treatment decisions. You are fighting, and it's a continuous fight. Even when you're on that pathway of treatment, you are constantly thinking, is it the right treatment? Is it the right thing that I'm doing? You're battling all of these side effects. So it is a constant fight, and that anxiety doesn't go. It does increase, unfortunately, throughout the time. And it kind of comes up and it shows and it just portrays in such different ways. So very physical ways, emotional ways, lack of sleep, lack of control, anger, frustration, sadness, even moments of euphoria, which are actually underlined with anxiety. Because those moments of euphoria are kind of like that mask that you put on to say, actually, no, I've got this in control. So what? I've got a bit of cancer. You know what? So many people are diagnosed. 1 in 2 people are diagnosed with cancer. I've got this, and I'm going to fight this. But deep inside, you're like, am I going to die? Am I going to leave my children? Am I going to leave my family? Am I going to go out without having put on a proper fight?
Those are the biggest questions that a human can be wrestling with, and the layers of anxiety-inducing things that you're dealing with. And I can see, as you were talking, Alison and Sanna just nodding like yes, with that real understanding of the complexities of that. And I wanted to ask you, you mentioned the different ways that anxiety shows up. How did it show up in relationships? Did you find that your anxiety sort of spilled out behaviorally?
Yes. It showed up in many different ways, and relationships are so difficult to navigate because you are going through so much and you are really trying to take it all in, and then you're having to deal with the feelings of the loved ones around you, the feelings of those that are there for you, or even the feelings of those that say they will be there for you and then don't end up showing up. You're dealing with so many different dynamics in relationships, and people don't understand, because they would have to have cancer to truly get how you're feeling, and you do not want your loved ones to get cancer, so they won't truly understand, because your thoughts are all over the place. You're managing your whole family. Whatever your life was like, you have to keep going. And it came out, unfortunately, in some ways, as anger, frustration. I really appreciate Alison sharing, such a sensitive topic. And I think it can either make or break a relationship with a partner. I'm very, very thankful for my partner. My husband has been my rock, and it has truly brought us closer together. And there was a lot of frustration, don't get me wrong, because roles were reversed, or I went from being a very, very independent woman to having to rely on all those around me. Another person, my mother, who has been my absolute everything throughout this whole healing process and still is to this day. And it was me that was there for her. So there was a lot of guilt. I think that comes with it, that with anxiety as well. You can associate the feelings of guilt as well. And I had to really take that time to process and understand. Sometimes I have to put myself in the other person's shoes and not always be selfish or play that cancer card and think, actually, you know what? These people are here because they love me and they care for me. And although I maybe don't want them to be here right now, I don't want my gorgeous, lovely 3-year-old jumping on top of me and jumping on top of where I had surgery. But he loves me and he is my true ray of sunshine. So I think it's taking that moment to understand as well, really reframe your thoughts and understand that these people are here for you because they love you and care for you. Take that time, just understand their feelings as well.
Yeah, I love that you said that. And it is actually really hard to do when you're anxious because we're being flooded with adrenaline, and adrenaline is quite a disconnecting hormone going through our body. It's designed for that, fight, flight, freeze, submit, fawn, flop, all of those things. And on a very physical level, it's designed so if we were running away from danger and we stubbed our toe, we wouldn't be like, oh, ow, 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 right? Which is why, when adrenaline is going for a good reason, you're out on a night out or something dancing, and then you wake up the next morning, you're like, where did I get bruise from? But you didn't even feel it because it was like kind of good adrenaline.
Yes.
But when it's adrenaline that's constantly there, like you were saying, constantly being triggered by the next thing, on multiple levels at the same time, that adrenaline is designed to make us reactive. It's designed to make us disconnect from our bodies, from our feelings, and to some degree disconnect from other people. So as a human, as a species, as an animal, we save ourselves. Yeah. And so I can just imagine actually to be able to go, how might they be feeling, is actually overriding all of that chemistry in our bodies, all of that adrenaline to get to that point. And no small task. So I just wanted to kind of flag why it's so tricky, right, to handle it, is because it's designed to keep you in that heightened place. Everything is telling you, don't relax, don't tune in, don't connect, stay safe, stay separated. Lovely. Thank you so much for sharing that, Fatima. And if I could change the world, I would say everyone in a relationship or not would have some kind of relationship counseling, right? Because it does affect our relationships, whether that be with a partner, new date, Alison, like going out for the first time, or someone that you've been with and you've got 3 kids with, or it's your best mate, or a parent. Like, it does affect our relationships. Hannah, I'd love to bring you in. How has it been hearing from Alison and Fatima?
I think there's a real strength in sharing experiences and vulnerability. So even though we don't have obviously the same diagnosis, like so much of what Fatima and Alison have said resonates with me. I think, I don't know, it's just validating knowing that other people are going through the same fear. Sorry, but the spiraling, the questions, they're not just mine, and it makes me feel less alone.
Can you tell me a little bit about where anxiety was in your life before you were diagnosed?
I've always experienced anxiety. It's always been part of my life, I think, as far as I can remember. I think of it as a bit of a shapeshifter. So depending on what's going on in my life, it can move and attach itself to various different uncertainties. And I think, in the past, I've sought help for that. I've learned tools, and that's, been really helpful. But getting a cancer diagnosis just completely knocks you off balance, and you forget about those tools for a while.
Yeah. So what was happening in your life when you got your cancer diagnosis?
So I was 37, busy with with work and social life. I'd recently walked a marathon. I was planning to do more. Well, yeah, I mean, we were the slowest group, but we did it. We finished.
Very impressive.
Thank you. And I wanted to do more, but I was having, I would say, low-level symptoms I didn't realize were symptoms. I loved going out walking my dogs, went swimming in the local river. And I was planning to have a baby, and I'd started exploring fertility treatment. Well, more than started. So as I said, I'd had symptoms for a while, 2 years actually, since the first symptom presented. And I'd been to see GPs, and they weren't worried, and I just thought they could easily, the symptoms could be easily explained away. It's stress, or it's IBS, or that sort of thing. And it wasn't until I actually started fertility treatment that the fertility consultant said there was something wrong, and that kickstarted my diagnosis.
And when you got that diagnosis, did
Yes.
anxiety affect your relationship with your medical team?
I think I lost trust in my initial medical team, I would say, with the NHS. And I've always, great admiration for the NHS. I still use the services, but it had been a 2-year wait to diagnosis, and it had been really stressful experience. And so I was really lucky to have private medical insurance available to me through work. So I think after I was told I had cancer, I decided to go private. So yeah, it's been a quicker experience, I think, in some ways, but I wouldn't always say easier. Yeah, like I said, I was misdiagnosed, and then sort of a few weeks later, the pathology results came in. I was re-diagnosed with a rare cancer called peritoneal mesothelioma. So it sort of affects the lining of your abdomen. And I don't think, because I'd been misdiagnosed with, I think, first of all, it was primary peritoneal cancer and then ovarian cancer. Because peritoneal mesothelioma doesn't have the word cancer in it, I think I felt like a sense of relief. I didn't understand the full weight of what the diagnosis meant. And I was, I think, high anxiety at that point. I wasn't able to take it all in. My oncologist is amazing, but I really controlled, talk about control, I really controlled the flow of information. So, my sister came with me to every appointment. She became my brain. She took on all of the information. I just couldn't process it. I couldn't really say the C word. I didn't Google anything. I just went off the limited information that I was given, and I was constantly looking for reassurance. And I think that probably lasted about 5-6 months, and I was, coming to the end of my chemo treatment. And I can't remember exactly what happened, whether I saw something online or not, but I suddenly realized that the cancer I have is incurable. And it was like a light switch going, and I just wanted to know everything. I needed all of the facts, and actually knowing everything became more reassuring than having my head in the sand. So I don't know what was going on there, but yeah, that's how it sort of happened for me. And I didn't even want to join any support groups to begin with. I really pushed it all away, and then I've sort of gone the other way, and I want support, and I want to be involved in groups, and I want to advocate, because the cancer I have a rare cancer within a rare cancer, and it's usually associated with older men and affects the lungs, and mine's in the abdomen. And it's just, I need to do something positive with it.
Here and there was this shift. So there was, so the anxiety was there was an overload of bandwidth. So you kind of mentioned not being able to process, but then almost when you started to realize what was, the anxiety became energizing in terms of, okay, so now I want to know these things. Now I want support. Now, where do I get it? How do I advocate? It's almost, like a real shift. Do you think that some of that energy comes from anxiety?
I think it's channeling my anxiety, and I can't just sit with it. I suppose, again, comes back to that uncertainty. And I think, Alison, you mentioned think about numbers. I can't think, do I have 1 year? Do I have 2 years? Do I have 5 years? I have to do something that takes my mind off of it. Yeah. And so I think that's why it kind of went the other way. I mean, who knows? I mean, sometimes I go too far and I have to switch off everything again.
As we go towards the part of the conversation when we're thinking about what's useful, I mean, the things that I can really hear already are kind of okay, where can I find control? What things can I do for my body? what Fatima was saying, how can I actually acknowledge the weight of, what is being held? And I wonder, in there, thinking about, is there anything about anxiety which is useful? Thinking about kind of, does it give energy sometimes? Does it give direction sometimes? So yeah, I'm curious. You could be like, no, that's ridiculous.
Yeah.
I can come to Alison and then Fatima.
Yeah, I think for me it did give energy, and I think if anything it was finding a healthy way to direct the energy, especially when what I initially wanted to do wasn't available to me. So I think, Fatima, you mentioned flight, fight, or freeze, and I think
Yes.
even in that, like it does give you the energy to do any of those, and even freezing. You think that kind of dissociation, that kind of freezing, that kind of numbness, that doesn't have an energy to it, but it actually does. Like in an animal, when it freezes, when it becomes unfrozen, it shivers, it shakes. Like our bodies have to process it. There is a physical, like there is an energizing element to anxiety. And I think finding the right way to direct it was the challenge. Because I think what I wanted to direct it towards was control in a situation and in a life that doesn't guarantee control. So I think I had read that from like Brene Brown had talked about the near enemy. So the opposite of love is hate, but the near enemy of love is apathy. So it's something that can look a bit more similar, that doesn't look like the complete opposite, but is actually really undermines the thing. And the near enemy, she said, the near enemy of connection is control. And you can't connect with a person that you're trying to control. You can't connect with something you're trying to control. And I realized that every time I had the urge to control something, I tried to lean more into connection. So if I wanted to control my life, how could I connect with my life and be in my body and notice, literally like walking the dog in the morning, the way the sun would hit the lavender in the local park and the way the bees would swarm around the lavender, like just to connect with the present moment. So yeah, there was an energizing element, but it was just how to harness that where it was helpful, as opposed to just, almost like a fly caught in the house that keeps buzzing against the closed window when there's an open window right next to it. I think I was a bit like that. There was a lot of energy, but it was going into bouncing against the closed window.
Yeah, I love that concept of the near enemy, and the other word that you used was harnessing. And it is this process, right, of, okay, this is how I'm feeling. Can I harness it to figure out what it is that I need in this moment? What will make this, whether that be reaching out for support, being around other people, coming along to a Shine program, for example, or whether that is thinking about, am I hanging on too much to control? And that is so tough. And we talk about this in the programs, because we have a diagram called circles of control. And one of the things that we mention is that sometimes we can really be hanging on very tight to things that we think we can control. I've used an example of my girlfriend during chemo. We were at the supermarket and she wanted to buy some cereal. Quite an innocuous thing to want. I almost lost it. It was a really big box of cereal. It wasn't going to fit in my cupboard. Why was she keeping it at my house? We weren't living together. I don't want that cereal in my cupboard. And I lost the plot over the cereal, which in hindsight, it was nothing to do with the cereal. She had done other annoying things that I'd probably let go, that the cereal was the tipping point. And so I really like that idea of, when we are losing it over things that we can't control, actually thinking about connection and thinking about, the opposite of that adrenaline is that sensory connection. And when you were describing, what's outside, what you can hear, what you can smell, what you can touch, what you can taste, all of those things. Fatima, is there something that you found, that you've experimented with, that you found quite useful or quite not useful, actually. You're just like, yeah, I'm not doing that again.
I mean, I just have to pick up where Alison has left off with the connection. You just worded it so beautifully, and honestly, seeking connection is a really important part to dealing with anxiety, stress, and uncertainty. And I think that we have to stop isolating our feelings and really do find a platform to share it. And I guess that is where Shine does come in. It's a fantastic platform to be able to share with like minded individuals who know exactly what you're experiencing and what you're thinking. And it doesn't always have to be a support group. It could always be a professional. Therapy is an incredibly important tool, and I've learned a lot from therapy, and also just from the online communities, from people around you. One thing that I came across a quote before my pre-diagnosis, but again, a very difficult time. And it was learning about the term called glimmer. And again, really does resonate with what Alison was saying, is that we're so used to looking out for our triggers. As you just mentioned, Tatum, you had a bit of a trigger over the cereal. We are very used to, as humans, we're just inclined to focus on our triggers. But we need to focus on the word that is opposite to a trigger, which is a glimmer. And in those moments when you see a glimmer, you want to make yourself feel joy, happiness, and you want to focus on your gratitude for life, for what really means to you. And this too shall pass. And once you train your mind and your brain to look out for those glimmers, those tiny moments will start to appear more and more. And like you, Alison, again, to do with nature, I saw a ladybird on my car the other day, and it was just moving so peacefully across my car. And I just kind of fell into that moment. It helps when the sun shines as well, doesn't it? And
Yeah.
I just focused on that moment. The birds were whistling in the background, and I just took a deep breath and said, "You're going to be okay. There's a lot you can't control. There's a lot that will take over, but you're going to be okay." Embrace that uncertainty and make it part of your life, and say, yes, this is difficult, but I will be able to handle it. I'm going to take that moment and I'm going to take that breath, and I will handle it. And use anxiety as a signal as well. Use it as a tool for, do I need to change? Do I need this person in my life? Do I need this headache? Do I need to see all these emails before I go to bed? Or do I need to answer to every single person? No. Use it as a signal. Create boundaries, healthy boundaries, and address the fearness that you have, address the worries that you have, and know that it will pass. So yes.
Yeah, and while you were talking, I could really hear, you know how in the beginning of the conversation we were talking about the layers that were going up, one thing on top of another in terms of the complexity, the bureaucracy, mortality, dealing with relationships, dealing with uncertainty, and then having other things in our lives that need our attention, in terms of relationships and all of that. And I wonder if on the other side of it, in terms of what can help, there is also layers, because I think sometimes when you're super everything is going on, you can just be like, I'm looking at a rose but I am not grateful. Because actually the adrenaline is there, and I'm wondering if there are steps that get to that point that actually, because I am a rose sniffer, I'm so with you on that, and I've found some really horrible smelling roses as well. Some of them are not that nice.
Yes.
But it's in that being in that sensory moment, but thinking about, okay, if those glimmers are not available, then maybe it's another step to get there, to get to that fun and that joy. We're kind of talking about connection, maybe not feeling alone, but also, I wanted to bring Sanna into the conversation here. Sometimes if it is so physical and it's in your body and it's in, maybe disruptions from hormones and treatment, that maybe it's also medical, course of action in terms of harnessing. So Sanna, I would love your opinion. or your thoughts on this?
I think there is a lot of shame, I think, around taking medication for anxiety. You see it a lot on social media. And whilst other tools, like I find breath work really helpful, meditation are great, sometimes you do just need medication, and that's okay. And you can stay on it, you can come off it, come and go as you please, whatever works for you. But I think it's really important that sits alongside other avenues of support for anxiety and isn't something, it's not one or the other. They're not mutually exclusive. They can sort of work hand in hand. And that's what I've found really helpful.
Yeah, absolutely. Self included. And I think that's the thing is, we all end up figuring out the little places that work for us, but also maybe it's equally as complicated when we're kind of putting it back together. And trying to figure out what is it that we need first.
Yeah.
And taking anti-anxiety medication made the world of difference to me. Often they didn't want to, they're like, we don't really want to be giving this out. And I'm like, just give me an hour freedom, from just let my body relax. Like, I know, as a relaxation expert, I know all the things to do, but sometimes I can't do them. It's just hard or impossible, and I just need something to take the edge off, and then I can look after myself. Then I can get to that point. And some of it, may be psychological as well. Like, sometimes I'll just have something that will relax me in my bag, and I'm like, if it gets really bad, if I have a spin of panic attacks, I've got something, it's going to be okay. And that's that calming, I've got it in hand.
Yeah, you wouldn't just tell someone with an infection just to sort of manifest their way through it, It's still, mental health is still one of, the most heavily stigmatized areas. And, if it needs treatment, it needs treatment.
And I think anxiety, like, we are talking about it more now than we used to. I'm glad that Doechii is singing about it, although it's like everywhere right now. I think there is something essentially lonely about it. So I really appreciate all of you being here and sharing, the complexities that go with this, and how tough it is, because I think it is in this connection that it can start to ease that loneliness. And as loneliness starts to ease, the harnessing, the possibilities start to open up. Perhaps let us know. I'd really love for our listeners to get in touch. Let us know what works for you, maybe what hasn't. I know for me now, I know the things that are likely to raise my anxiety, and I give more space around those things. I know around a scan, don't go back to work. You're going to be useless. Don't get into a conversation with whoever I'm dating that evening. I'm not going to be myself, and even thinking about certain things, it's like, okay, what are the things? So driving long distances is already anxiety producing for me. So how do I not do that on a day that I have something else going on? Can I streamline? Can I make space for it? Because it's not going to go away. But yeah, whether that be rose sniffing or taking over that guy in the middle lane. I imagine you did take him over, right? You got in front.
Of course I did.
Yeah. Thank you so much to all of you. Really appreciate everything. And you've given me things to think about, and that's what I love. I know in the middle of the night tonight, I'm going to be thinking of near enemies, how to really connect. So thank you to all of you. And thank you to all of you listening. We really appreciate you. And to Radio Facilities for sponsoring our podcast. And get in touch. Come along to a Shine meetup, be around other people where we get to share our anxiety and not feel alone with it. And connect by all the different ways, weird and wonderful and really annoying, that it shows up. So head over to shinecancersupport.org. Till next time. Bye.